we're for some strange reason, we're still on page 118, but here we go. Elokaina tzula shani me'ras v'atay midaber mirmo. So we spoke about yesterday. We spoke with the idea of language, of using your mouth properly, speaking properly. It was interesting with the juxtaposition with the beginning of the Amida and the end of the Amida. The beginning of the Amida begins with the same kind of a plea, right? Of let me use my mouth properly so that I can speak your praises. And at the end, guard my tongue from evil. So I heard once an interesting idea. They said this by the Hasidim that why are we asking God here at the end of the Amida to guard my tongue from evil? So I had this interesting idea that very often people make the mistake of breaking their day up into the religious part of the day and then the secular part of the day. So a person goes to shul and they pray in the morning. That's a religious part of the day. And then they go out and they go to work and they do whatever. That's a secular part of the day. And in many people's minds, that the religious and the secular, never the twain shall meet, which means that when you go to shul, you can be frum and you can do what you need to do, but when you go to work, that's something else altogether. And I guess, in the marketplace, the idea of selling your products by not, maybe by not being completely truthful about what it is that you're selling, it's something which is pretty much accepted all over the place. Today, it's interesting, when I was growing up, when people try to sell the products, they normally try to focus on what was good about their product. And what I've noticed is nowadays, very often what people do is they focus on what's bad in their competitors' products in order to, convince you to buy their product instead. And, that's like negative advertising. And I think it's an interesting idea that at the end of the Amida, which sort of symbolizes the end of davening, it's true, there's a little bit more that we say, to finish up Shacharis, we say a little bit more over here, but nevertheless, it's the idea of coming to the end of davening, you're coming towards the end of it, and you just need to remember that when you walk out of shul, Elokaina tzula shani me'ras, I've got to hold on to these ideas, I've got to keep that religious dimension inside of my life as well. Moshe, the source for the person saying Amen gets more reward than the person who says the bracha is the Gemara in Brachas on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. Just in case anybody was, don't look at me like that. Somebody asked yesterday, so I
always thought it was better to say Amen.
Yeah, that's what it says. The Gemara says, God la omer, the person who answers Amen has more reward than the person who says the bracha. And it's also the Gemara at the end of Nazir as well. But the first source is the Gemara in Brachas, and I know that you probably didn't have any sleep last night because you were tossing and turning and wondering where it came from. So now Mitzvah Hashem, today you'll be able to make up your lack of sleep. Umakalalai nafshi tidom. Right, and those who curse me, let my soul be silent. Now, this is a very strange kind of a prayer, no?
I know, I'm just...
I mean, it's odd, right?
Yeah,
it's odd.
Yeah.
You would have thought that if somebody's cursing you, that maybe you should react. You don't have to react in like. You don't have to curse them back, but...
So you're saying whoever curses me, curses my soul to be quiet?
No, other way round, right? It's... Ulamakalai nafshi tido, umakalalai, comma, those who curse me, nafshi tidom, let my soul be silent, which means don't let me react.
If I can say something about nefesh is related to the blood. So how your blood boils.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, the soul split up into 5 different compartments or 5 different departments, and one of them is the nefesh, and the nefesh is a part that travels around inside of your blood. So maybe, maybe I never thought about that. That maybe that's the idea, that your blood represents your emotions, right? When a person is hot-blooded, so their blood boils, right? And maybe that's the idea why it uses the word nafshi as opposed to any other dimension. Again, there are 5 dimensions to the soul, right? Nefesh, neshama, ruach, yechida, and chaya. And why dafka this one? That's an interesting idea, because I guess you're right, because it relates to the emotional side of who we are. But the kasha over here is why should I be? Why would that be something to aspire towards? Why am I aspiring towards not reacting to somebody who curses me?
And also allowing yourself to remain cool-headed in a sense, like that. I don't react and then like in a negative, like because as we say, like kast is like idol worship.
It's vengeful.
So don't allow me to get towards being like angry. Don't allow
Okay,
me to-
good. Yeah, don't be right. It's. I think it's both of these things together. It really is. It's true that when you first think about it, the idea of reacting to somebody who does something bad to you seems to make perfect sense, right? Somebody curses you out. So good, now you have to react somehow. But the question over here is, what? First of all, where is that reaction? Where's it going to get you? All right. So the first thing you need to know in general, all of us know this, that the idea of reacting to somebody, so that's just going to spark off another reaction, which will spark off another reaction from you, and then something will blow into the most enormous, the most enormous fight, the most enormous argument between you, even though it really shouldn't have been. If you would have just held on to yourself, it wouldn't have turned into that, right? It takes two people to argue. I always tell people, somebody comes along and they tell you that, they tell you something. So if you tell them you're right, it kind of takes the wind out of their sails, right? So, somebody comes and he wants to tell you off because you've done something you shouldn't have done. So the emphasis is, if it's true, the simplest way of dealing with the problem is just to say, you're right.
Just like David Melech.
Yeah,
When
100%.
I don't remember who was it who was cursing him. And
Shimi Ben Gera, right? He comes and he curses him out and he says, no, it's fine. It's coming to me, right? I deserve whatever it is that's being said. I deserve it. The Sefer HaChinuch talks about that. Sefer HaChinuch is a book that was written where it explains the mitzvahs. It's actually a very interesting chinuch. The word chinuch comes from education. So it's a very interesting thing. There was somebody called Rav Aaron who came from a place called Barcelona, right? But now for those of you, Barcelona is not in Los Angeles, so you've probably never heard of it. But it's apparently, this has yet to be verified. But apparently, when you step outside of America, there are some other continents as well that comprise the lesser part of the world. Apparently, I don't know. This is what I've heard.
Right, all say that.
For sure, it's just like one of these sort of myths that get passed down.
If I haven't seen it on the news, it doesn't matter.
But so Rav Aaron in Barcelona had a son. This is the way that the story is told. He had a son. He's a very early authority. We're going back hundreds of years. Rav Aaron mi Barcelona.
What's the book called, Rabbi?
Sefer HaChinuch.
It's actually really cool to learn it along with the parsha.
Oh, so how does he break it up? He breaks it up according to the parshas, right? And you can see each parsha has got, not each parsha, there are a few parshas that don't have any mitzvahs, but as a rule, each parsha has got mitzvahs inside of it. And he teaches the mitzvahs that appear inside of that parsha. And he explains where the mitzvah comes from, what the function of the mitzvah is, what was the reason that he wrote the book, because he had a son who wasn't doing very well religiously. And he wanted to teach him without it being too preachy, I guess, right? So he taught him the reasons behind the mitzvahs. Right. Now we've spoken about this in the past, but it's worth repeating it because it's kind of neat. The reasons for the mitzvahs are called in Hebrew ta'amei ha-mitzvot. The taste of the mitzvahs. A ta'am is a taste. And what's fascinating about the description of ta'amei ha-mitzvot is that the taste of something that's not the essence of that thing. Right? The essence of the thing is whatever, think of food for a minute, right? So the food that you're eating, that's the essence of what you're eating. The taste is a byproduct which makes something nicer, right? We're drawn towards something because we know the taste is good. But for example, an orange is a pretty neat thing, right? It's full of, where I come from, it's full of vitamins and minerals. Where you people come from, I imagine it's full of, actually it's probably full of heroin and crack and all other kinds of things because you come from Los Angeles.
Which aren't filled with heroin and crack?
GMOs?
I refuse to incriminate myself, but what you call vitamins and I call vitamins and minerals and all kinds of things. But the reason to eat the orange is because it's good for you, it's healthy, it's full of vitamin C and all kinds of things, right? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his great chesed, in his great mercy, what did he do? He gave the orange the most incredible taste as well, so that not only do we know that we've got to eat oranges, but we want to eat oranges too. Right? That's most, incredible dimension.
Cheesecake.
Huh?
No, you explain cheesecake.
Exactly.
Tastes good, but it's not good for you.
Well, I mean, then it's fats and sugars. So there's the question of why that's the first. For example, the mother's breast milk is like a fats and sugars. It's like very sweet and it has like a lot of cream and also filled with vitamins and minerals. But behind those, so the fats and sugars have like an inherent, almost like a primal trigger that
What?
reacts to our tongues and our minds.
What did you do that for? They're from Los Angeles, these guys. They're Californians. Wait, now look what you've done. In a moment, he's going to spring over the
He's from
table,
California too.
and he's going to start throttling you
What?
because you mentioned the possibility of eating cheesecake, which
No.
is an unhealthy thing to do.
I'm just saying why. I'm just trying to answer his question.
We're drawn for sure. We're drawn towards here fast food, right? Fast food.
Hashem made oranges, we didn't. we made cheesecake.
No trans fats in California, okay?
So
There's no cheesecake
You know
tree
what?
anywhere. Or cheesecake bush.
We outlaw trans fats in California.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no trans fats.
But see, how did fast food? How did it work? It's very simple, right? Never mind that it's terribly unhealthy, right? But you get the most unbelievable explosion of taste immediately as you eat it, right? Whereas other foods, especially you speak to connoisseurs, they'll tell you that foods need to be savoured, and you need to identify the taste. The only thing you identify when you're eating fast food is the oil and the salt, and that's a pretty explosive combination. It gets you going. But the idea is what? Ta'amei hamitzvot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made oranges. They're good for us. They're healthy for us. But He wants us to enjoy them as well. Right? So the Sefer HaChinuch, that's how we got onto this, right? Everything comes around to fast food somehow. But Sefer HaChinuch was written to give the Ta'amei HaMitzvot, which means it's not coming to, it's coming to enhance the mitzvah. It's not coming to say that, that we do the mitzvah because this is the reason. We got to do the mitzvahs anyway, right? We need those vitamins anyway. If we don't eat them through oranges, so the doctor will tell us that we'll have to take vitamin supplements instead, right?
So basically, Sefer Chinuch was like the spice of a mitzvah.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
make it
very
better.
much so. It's coming to give it a taste and a spice that you're going to enjoy, and if you enjoy the reason, then hopefully you enjoy doing it as well, right?
Enhances the reward.
Huh? It's
English
called in English. It's simply called Sefer HaChinuch, and it's you can get it. There are
creative.
English translations around, huh?
Very creative, I said.
Yeah, well, I mean, the emphasis is like this. Sefer HaChinuch means that the book of education, but it's not. That doesn't. Chinuch and education.
Barcelona?
Yeah.
Who was around? Who else was around that time? That was the golden age almost. So
Talking about the Ramban. I mean, it's a
Shmuel he was in Cordoba.
I mean, it's
Barcelona, you had quite a lot of them.
yeah. It was a hub at the time. It was a hub of Jewish learning. It was a tremendous source of Jewish scholarship over there.
The whole of Spain, you had Benjamin of Toledo, who made a long trip through the whole of Palestine.
One of the most important historians, Jewish historians for sure. He went around places that no one had ever been to, and documented everything. It's fascinating. That whole era was fascinating. Somebody called Benjamin in Toledo. But there's the golden age of Spanish Jewry was a fascinating age. Historically, the minute the Jews were expelled from France, not the minute, but after the Jews were expelled from France, from Spain lost its. It was at one point in that era, it was a very, very important, very powerful empire, and after the Jews were sent out, they lost their power bit by bit until it was finally, destroyed by the English in the Armada, and it was gone. There's a fascinating little story. I don't know if it's true or not, that the most of the Jews, when they were expelled from Spain, moved into the Ottoman Empire, and good,
My
right?
family came from Spain to Turkey. and to
Oh,
Mexico.
right. So Turkey at the time, of course, was the center of the Ottoman Empire, and the Sultan Suleiman. This is the way they tell the story. He sent a letter to Queen Isabella of Spain, thanking her for having sent the most important commodity in Spain down to him, because the financial empire of the Spanish Empire was underwritten by the Jews.
So she said that the commodity was the Jews.
He said that was like the most precious commodity in Spain was the Jews. They'd been expelled. They came down to him. So he was very well brought up. So he sent a letter thanking Queen Isabella of Spain for having sent the Jews down to him. And after that, interestingly enough, the Ottoman Empire began to flourish, and it became at that point in history, in contradistinction to today, that the empire, that Ottoman Empire, became something of great scholarship, full of philosophy and mathematicians and science and all kinds of things, and all of that. Of course, again, it's all centered around the Jewish, the Jewish brains that were being poured into the area. Afterwards, when they moved up into European countries, so the same thing happened all over again. I mean, it's an interesting idea. How did we get onto this? I don't remember, but that was the era that he lived in at the time. It was an era of great scholarship, and he wrote this fantastic book. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's a book that it's well worth having a look at, well worth studying. He has the most beautiful insights. But he says in Sefer HaChinuch, he says, I'm remembering how we got there, right? In Sefer HaChinuch, he says like this, that there really is no point taking revenge if you believe that everything comes from God. Which means that, and he uses that as the example that you gave. He uses the example of Shimi ben Gera, who curses out King David. That is, King David is running away. He's in the midst of a rebellion, and he's not doing very well right now. And he's running away. And Shimi ben Gera, the way that the story unfolds in the prophet in the book of Samuel, is that he's up on the top of a hill and he's cursing. At the top of his voice, he's cursing out King David and calling him all kinds of very not nice names. And one of King David's generals says, "Here, let me. I'll go take care of him." Right? And King David says, "No, leave him be." Right? He's only doing whatever God sent him to do. That's what he's doing. And from there, the Sefer HaChinuch teaches that there's a mitzvah, right? One of the negative commandments, not to take revenge. Nakama. You're not allowed to take revenge. And that's how he explains. He explains that the function of revenge is what? You imagining that you are in control of your destiny. And therefore, if somebody does something to you, you should do something back to them, because it's as if you're right to be able to do that. And he explains in Sefer HaChinuch that if you believe that everything comes from God, so if this person's done this thing to you, so what exactly are you taking revenge over? But, as we all know, because it's an emotional responses are things which normally are very arrogant, but they're also very immediate, spontaneous. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Why didn't you say it a moment before? Why did you wait and let me struggle like that?
I'm kind of tired, sorry.
But didn't they create the sanctuary cities to deal with this problem of blood?
Oh, absolutely, right. The cities of refuge, right, which were established in the land of Israel, were there so that if somebody killed somebody, manslaughter, right, inadvertently, they could go to that place. And the Gemara, the sages themselves say, no one's being killed without divine intervention, right? Which means that God is, this person over here is deserving of some kind of a death punishment, but not through the courts. It's a divine.
The family goes after him.
Oh, so that's a different concept. It's interesting, right? Over there, for sure, the Goal Adam, you've got the avenger of the blood, right? And over there, that really is something which is absolutely astonishing, because the Torah teaches that you're not allowed to have revenge, and yet the Torah tells you that when you've got somebody who killed somebody else inadvertently and he runs off to the city of refuge, the Beis Din nominates somebody it's called a Goel Adam, which means he's going to avenge the blood of the person who was killed. And if the person who committed manslaughter leaves the city of refuge for whatever the reason, then this person has the rights to be able to try to kill him.
Yeah, the worst game of time.
What's fascinating about the Goel Adam is that the Gemara says that if there was no family member, then the Beis Din will appoint, I don't know what's happened this morning, the Beis Din will appoint somebody who's got no family connection whatsoever to be the Goel Adam, right, to be the avenger of this person.
Mercenaries?
Huh?
Like a mercenary?
What, like, like a bounty hunter maybe?
Yeah, kind of like bounty hunter.
Yeah, right? Just without having to bring them back. It's not dead or alive, just dead or dead, right? The choices here is dead or dead, which is fascinating, right? Which means what we learn from over there, that the commentaries explain that it's clear from the various halachas that revolve around the Goel Adam that this avenger, that's not nakama, that's not revenge. avenger and revenger are two different things. And it's got some kind of a divine dimension to it, which is different from the simple concept of revenge. The simple concept of revenge is you did something to me which I don't like, so I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to give it back to you. Right? And it's the idea over here. Now, what's the problem? The problem is like this. We know that emotional responses are things which are very difficult to control. And that's why we say to God, that you've got to help me do this, because the idea of not taking revenge is something which is very difficult for people to overcome. Right? We all know that. V'nafshi ke'ofor lakol tiyeh, and that my soul should be like the dust to everybody. So I want an interesting idea. Again, it's like a psychological insight. Very often, people can be split up into two different kinds of people. There are users and there are abusers. Right? People who are used and people who are abused. Again, I'm talking in general terms. Don't make faces like that. But within inside of many relationships, you've got people who will utilize the relationship to get people to do things for them. I'm not talking necessarily in an obviously negative way over here. Right? Again, maybe that was the problem. When we talk about abuse in general, abuse is something which is bad, and it's something which has got to...
Even being used.
Even being used, right? But inside of relationships, most relationships are based on give and take, right? And most relationships are based normally on when you've got if you think of a husband and a wife relationship, so very often you've got a relationship of one side is more dominant than the other, personality-wise. They normally balance each other. It's normally good. That's fine, right?
And it's not always the husband that's the dominant.
No, it's not. No, don't be so chauvinistic, right? It's not always the woman,
when
but you know what?
somebody's more dominant, that creates balance.
When you've got somebody who's less and somebody who's more, so it creates a balance between them, right? When you've got when you've got two people who are both dominant, so that is a recipe for a difficult relationship. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have to work, right? But it's more difficult. That's all, because they're going to.
That are both passive.
So if you've got two passive people, again, the relationship tends to be passive as well.
There's like not a lot of communication.
It could be a fine relationship, but it will be not a very proactive relationship, which is fine. Again, each to their own. I'm not it's not a man-woman thing. It really isn't. It's a personality thing. Very often, I think this is a general psychological thing that people are attracted. When they say people are attracted to the opposites, right? I think very often that's very true, right? And we are attracted to opposites because subconsciously we're looking for something which is going to complement us, right? And we're going to be able to complement them, and that's where you you can get a very beautiful balance over that. That's for sure. Huh?
But also there's I don't know, I was just thinking birds of a feather flock together.
Birds of a feather flocking together is to do more with a communal thing.
Right.
Right.
So in terms of your chosen family.
Yeah, for sure. Which means like this: birds of a feather means that you join a community which is like-minded. Right. It doesn't mean that every personality inside of it is the same. It just means you've got goals and ideals that. Yeah, 100%. Whereas inside of your personal relationship.
Then you need a balance between.
You need something which is going to help you complement and act as a foil. Exactly.
Sure. I'm sorry, we're from Los Angeles. So we have to be as stereotypical as possible.
It's just the Aleph, it's the same thing.
Huh?
Aleph has the same concept.
So you need the top yud and the bottom yud, and the bottom in between them.
That's beautiful.
It's a better way of looking at it.
That's beautiful.
So I have a question.
The question only is who's going to be the top yud and who's going to be the bottom yud. That's the question.
What
Right?
does it mean to let my soul be like dust?
What is dust?
Efer.
No, I've often wondered. Okay, what is dust?
It's dirt. I don't know.
Physical.
But what is dust? Come on.
It's
Down
the
before God
byproduct
breathed
of
the neshama into him. It's
Whatever
the physical world.
deceased, whatever desecrate,
No,
degraded.
dust is also can just be dust on.
Dust is something. You people are,
Ashes.
you people are far too deep. Really, just shallow yourselves up a little bit into my level.
No, what is dust?
what gets
Dust
walked
is
on.
like the tiny little particles that get everywhere taken by the wind.
Good.
gets
Right.
walked
Dust is completely Help me out.
Manipulated.
No.
Nothing.
It's nothing. But give me a proper word for that. It's completely it's underfoot. It's completely unimportant.
Irrelevant.
You can swish it and
It's
move
in the
it.
wind.
Right, which means like this. What's the pshat? We're saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should make. Where does Gaiva, pride? Where does it come from?
Where's what?
Pride, Ga'ava, right?
Ga'ava.
The idea that you imagine that you're something special, and you imagine that people need to relate to you in the way that you imagine is the correct way, right? Dust is the opposite of that, right? The concept of dust inside of Torah, inside of tefillah, inside of prayer, is that dust is something which has got it's nothing. And when I say that my nefesh it's nothing, right? I have to relate to myself as being nothing. There's a very beautiful idea over here, just before you get going, psychologically, but if you're nothing, then, how can you ever achieve anything? But if you look at yourself as being nothing, then you can build yourself into something.
Just being humble.
Right? Humble, right? Which means that what is humbleness? Let's work this one out.
Hashem, make me humble.
What is humbleness? Humbleness is not a mistaken idea. You go to the best brain surgeon in the world, right? And he says to you, "Oh, why have you come to me? Like little old me? Like what do I know? Well, I don't know. They said you were the best brain surgeon. Oh, yeah, that's right. You know what? Oh,
I don't know anything. What do you mean?
that's not. Yeah. That's.
You're not gonna touch my brain.
That's right. But that. If you come from Los Angeles, maybe he won't anyway. But it's not. Whatever. But it's a. Humble means that you know exactly how great you are. But you recognize that your greatness has been given to you by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's all. Moses is the greatest man who ever lived in history. And yet the Torah describes him as being the most humble of men. I would say like this, the only person who truly understood how great Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe himself. I don't think any other human being had the ability to be able to plumb the depths of just how great he really was. He spoke to God. Right? He brought the Torah into the world. He led the Jewish people. I mean, we're talking about things that are unfathomable, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu knows exactly how great he is. And yet the Torah describes him as being a humble person. Because the greater you are, and we should all aspire for greatness, right? But the greater you are, the greater you have to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's allowing you to do this. So, you hear, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows you to do something, so what am I being proud about?
See, that's why Rav Shalom says, say it in personal prayer, Ani klum ata kol, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
100%. What do you mean, Ani klum? How can you say I'm nothing?
I'm nothing.
Where in modern psychological parlance, if you walk around saying that you're nothing, they'll put you away. You'll get put into a lunatic asylum or something because you need help, right? But the emes is not like that. The emes is what? The emes is that compared to God, you're nothing. And if you remember that, then you can become something. But if you don't remember that, you won't. The first words in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, are Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. That I put God in front of me always.
That's the first word?
The first words. I don't know. The Shulchan Aruch is the Code of Jewish Law. Where's the law over here? This is not a halacha. It's like a heading, right? It's like one of these cutesy things. You see them up in shuls. They're written up in the on the front, on top of the Aron Kodesh in many shuls, right? It's a cutesy little thing, right? No, the pshat is what? That you will only keep the mitzvot if you put HaKadosh Baruch Hu in front of you first. Otherwise, why would you do it? Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's always got to be first. Hashem's in front of me. He's more important than I am. And if Hashem's more important than I am, then I can start building myself up. I can become who I need to become. So there's a very beautiful little idea. But one of the Hasidic Rebbes, Rav Simcha Bunim from Pshischa, which is one of those places in Poland that sounds like you just sneezed. I come from Pshischa, bless you. He says like this. He says that a person should walk around with two different notes written on two different pieces of paper, one in each pocket. On one side it should say, Bishvili nivra olam. The world was created just for me. It's a saying in the Gemara. It's Gemara in Sanhedrin, right? Bishvili nivra olam. That's pretty egocentric, right? Yeah. The world was created just for me. On the other piece of paper it should say a verse that Abraham told God, Anochi ofer ve'efer. I am dust and ashes. It says Rav Simcha Bunim, he says like this, that a person's task in this world is to know when to take out which piece of paper. But there are times when you've got to look at yourself as being Bishveli Nivra Olam, the whole world was created for me. And there are times when a person's got to look at himself and he's got to say, Anochi Ofer Ve'efer, I'm nothing but dust and ashes. And you've got to learn how to do it, you've got to learn when to apply, which one to which one, and all of a sudden then you can become what you need to become. Which is interesting, when it says that your soul here in the tefillah, it says your soul should be like dust. This is not a negative thing at all. This is coming in front of a Kodesh Baruch Hu and saying, listen, God, I'm nothing. I'm really nothing. I really believe I'm nothing. Hold on one second. Rav Chaim Volozhiner, the foremost Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, used to say like this: you're like a zero, right? So don't take this the wrong way. You're like a zero. God is like God is echad. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad. God is one. When you take a zero and you put it after the one, what have you got?
10.
You've turned yourself into a 10. A 10 is like a yud. A 10 is being like God down here in this physical world. But when you imagine you're more important than God and you put yourself in front of God, what have you just done? You just negated yourself, because a 0-1 spells out a 1. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remains come what may, right? But when you put yourself in front of Hashem, you just became, a 0 remains a 0. It's when the 0 comes after that it takes on some kind of an importance, right? And that's what the recognizing that you're afar, recognizing that you're dust, is the beginning of the way of being able to build yourself up and becoming who you need to become. So somebody over here mentioned, right? God, the sages say, the Talmud says that when God created the world and He created Adam, how did He create Adam? Before He breathed in him, he created a man-like figure by bringing dust from all different parts of the world and creating the figure. Afterwards, He blew life into it. So it's interesting, no? That the afar, that dust, is something which was the beginning of the creation of human mankind. And that's what we're saying, that's us. Right? And if I can recognize that, then I can become who I need to become. Yeah, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something.
I was just wanted to, I was just thinking that it says when Kala Nafshi Sidam, that means like to have a antagonistic response to them, like to have some type of constructive response to them. Like, I don't know, like, could be that's a mitzvah to do.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Don't get involved in confrontations, right? When somebody says to you something, so you know what's the simplest way to just deflect? I'm sorry you feel the way that you do. They just said something nasty about you, I don't know, they just said you came from California or something, it's like, that's about as low as it gets, right? And you just say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry you feel the way that you do. Finished. What are you saying? You're not agreeing with them, right? It's clear that you're not agreeing with them.
Tell me I'm from California, so you look like California did. You see where I'm at?
That makes people more angry.
That's the whole point.
You know what? When you've got somebody who's intent on I karate chop to the throat, maybe.
Judeo chop.
A lot of people want to get, they always Sharim, the kotel, they're always schnorring. So there's a friend of mine that I learned something from him that, he says, one of his friends got very angry, and he says, watch the next guy. He comes over and says to him, Hatzlacha. And he keeps on. He says, I'm not getting angry, I'm just telling him. Yeah. For me, you can says, but Hatzlacha, they like, one word can do the whole.
Or if you apologize, I'm sorry you feel that way, Somebody curses you, I'm like, alright, well, that's how you feel.
Whatever, finished. Okay, you're right. I mean, you've got somebody who's absolutely intent on having a fight with you, then,
Would you say, give me your money?
You're sorry
you feel that way.
No, that's something else. You just tell them that you're in education, you don't have any. That's all. Right? That's the simplest thing. And then it says like this: Petach libi b'toratecha. Open up my heart to your Torah. So again, the language over here, it's very poetic, and the language is very, very revealing. It really is. Petach libi b'toratecha.
So wait, before you move on, so.
What do you mean before we move on?
No, I'm saying so.
We just moved on. didn't we?
V'nafshika efer lekol tiyeh, meaning
Lakol, to everybody.
to everybody, not just to all human beings.
Yeah, which means like this. I forget that the more afar you make yourself, the bigger you're going to be in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not saying that you're making yourself efer in the eyes of Hashem, right? It's making yourself to everyone else. I saw once that it says like this, that the Pasuk says that a person is an olam katan. What is an olam katan? A small world. Each person is a microcosm of the world. So by the Hasidim they say like this, that if you look at yourself as being an olam shalem, you look at yourself as being a whole world, then you're really very small. But if you look at yourself as being small, then you can be an olam shalem, then you can be a whole world. Olam katan, right? Where are you putting your emphasis, right? So if you look at yourself as you don't put too much emphasis upon yourself, then you can really turn into something special. I read a very beautiful little story not very long ago. The Imre Emes, one of the great Hasidic rabbis from Gur, he was once, after a very, very long day, he was on his way back to his apartment. He was walking up the stairs to get back to his apartment, and one of the Hasidim came over to him and asked for a bracha for his daughter. And the Rabbi says, I really don't have a moment to spare right now. And the Chassid said to him, Rabbi, he says, I've been worrying and praying for my daughter's health for the last 20 years, and you don't even have a minute. And the Rebbe stopped, and he gave him as much time as he needed, and he gave him brachas, and the Rebbe said afterwards, he learned a great lesson over there. Right? You make yourself, I don't know, maybe the shot is that the smaller you make yourself over here in this world, the bigger you're going to be in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's going to be okay. Here, one of my all-time favorite stories.
We heard a story very similar just in Germany last week, and we heard that there was a Talmid Chacham that got a position that was a little higher, and then he didn't want, he said his job was to take out the trash in his home, and once he started to get that higher position, he felt like he didn't have to take out the trash anymore. So he told his wife, I don't have to. And then I guess she had some kind of thing with it, and he went to his Rebbe to tell him about it, and he said, oh, okay, you're right, you don't have to take out the trash. So when the time came around to take out the trash, on the door, the Rebbe comes and says, I'll take the trash for you.
Very good.
Remember that one? We heard
very good.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell over, there's a different story they tell about a rabbi in Germany who was elevated to the position of chief rabbi of Frankfurt, which was a very, very prestigious position. And when they brought him to, he stayed by one of the wealthy members of the community, and they were going to bring him in a horse-drawn carriage to the shul, and in the shul they were going to have a great big ceremony where they were going to, coronate him as the king. Coronate him as the rabbi. That was a Freudian slip, as the rabbi of the whole of Frankfurt. And the rabbi asked for a few moments, and he went into a room and he closed the door, and the host was intrigued. Right, what's going on? So he sticks his ear against the door and he's looking through the keyhole, and he hears the rabbi saying, oh, you're the most incredible Talmid Chacham, you are the smartest guy around, your Chidushei Torah are the sharpest and the smartest that I've ever heard, and you cut such an incredible figure, and I can't think of anybody who's more worthy to be the rabbi of Frankfurt than you, and it's it's our pride and honor to have you. And the wealthy man, he barges into the room, and he says to the rabbi, he says, what are you doing? So he says, you don't understand. He says, when I get taken in that carriage to the shul, he says, that's what I'm going to be hearing. That's what everyone is going to be saying. He says, a person could begin to believe this stuff. They really could. He says, but when you're in an empty room and you say it about yourself, you sound like an idiot. He says, I just wanted to keep things in perspective, that's all. It's an Indian, right?
But there's times where you need to say it to yourself.
Oh, there are times when you need to say it to yourself. I'll tell you something else even more interesting maybe. There are times when you need to behave like that as well. There are times when you need to behave, you need to take on a persona of being somebody who is in a position of responsibility. Maybe there is a time when it's not correct I don't know, to take out the garbage because that's shlom bayit. But there are times when a rabbi needs to behave, right, in a way where he's laying down his authority, because at the end of the day he is a rabbi. But that's a pshat with the two different notes, right? That you've got to know when you're supposed to and when you're not supposed to. Well, one of my all-time favorite stories, Rav Moshe Feinstein was the greatest rabbi in the previous generation. He was the accepted halachic authority amongst the whole of the religious Jewry. He was an absolutely astonishing man. And he wasn't a very tall man. He was only 5 foot tall. And they tell over a story, true story, about a father who came with his son to Rav Moshe to get a blessing because his son wasn't physically growing. So we're not going to discuss over here the crass insensitivity of the father of going to a 5 foot tall man to get a bracha that his son should physically grow. We'll talk about that. But Rav Moshe Feinstein's reaction was priceless. He gave this kid a pinch on his cheek, and he told the father, he says, "Don't you worry," he says, "I know some small people that became big." That's the most beautiful thing, because Rav Moshe Feinstein, I'm telling you, Rav Moshe Feinstein was the most humble of people. He was the most modest man you could possibly imagine, and yet he knew exactly who he was. He was under no illusions whatsoever. He knew exactly who he was. Right? And in the Jewish world, bigness is not measured in feet and inches. In the Jewish world, bigness is measured according to midot. Right?
King David.
He was small.
He was very small, and look what he did.
Yeah. Physical, you want to become great, you want to become big. It's traits, right? What are called midot tovot? That we should be good, and we should be kind, and we should be gentle, and we should be thoughtful. All of those things that sound, the kind of things that we would like to be, but doesn't always work out quite the way that we would want it. It's an Indian, right? So we asked to be like Afa, right? Ka'afa lakol tiyeh. And then we say, P'tach libi b'toratecha. Open my heart to your Torah. The most beautiful words over here. Why are we asking God to open our hearts to His Torah? You want to know the reason? It's very, very simple. It really is. You know why? Because learning Torah is hard. Just in case anyone here was under any illusions, right? Learning Torah is a hard thing to do. It's intellectually difficult. It is physically difficult to do it for concerted amounts of time. It's emotionally difficult to do. So we ask God, Patach libi b'toratecha, that you should open up my heart, that I should want to be able to learn your Torah. It's the most beautiful idea. It really is. We make the idea, we make the mistake of imagining that all of these phenomenally brilliant people that are around, that we look up to as being the rabbis of our generation and the leaders of our generation and our spiritual mentors, and we imagine that these people, they must have been born like that. And it's not true. They strived and they toiled in order to understand Torah, but the most important toil was to make themselves want to have it.
Put the Torah in your heart.
Put the Torah in your heart, right? That's something that we, 3 times a day, right? We say the same thing over and over again, 3 times a day to God, that He should help us do that. So listen to this. The Gemara says like this. If somebody tells you, Matzati v'lo yagati, I understood Torah and I never toiled. I just understood it. He says, Al tamin, don't believe him. And if somebody says, Yagati v'lo matzati, I toiled and I didn't understand the Torah, Al tamin, don't believe him. But if somebody says, Yagati v'matzati, I toiled and I understood, him you can believe. So ask the Kotzker Rebbe, one of the great Hasidic Rebbes from almost 200 years ago, from the town of Kotsk, very sharp question. He says like this, he says, what is wrong with saying, Yagati v'lo matzati, that I toiled and I didn't understand? We all of us have done that, right? Everybody here in this room, it doesn't matter what stage of Torah scholarship you're at right now, we all of us at one stage or another have struggled to understand something and not understood it. So what's wrong with saying, Yagati v'lo matzati? So says the Kotzker Rebbe, the most incredible thing. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to toil in Torah. It's a verse at the very beginning of the book of Joshua. It says, V'geiseh bo yom v'layla, that we should toil in Torah day and night. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to toil in Torah. If we understand the Torah, that's a bonus that's been given to us by Hashem. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us involved in Torah all day long. Somebody says, Yagati v'lo matzati, says the Kotzker Rebbe, he didn't understand what he was learning Torah for to begin with. He thought he was learning Torah to become intellectually more knowledgeable than he was the moment before. And says the Kotzker Rebbe, that's not pshat. The pshat is what? The pshat is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to toil in Torah. How does a person reach a level where they want to do that? P'tach livi b'toratecha. We turn to God. God should allow us to want to toil in His Torah. Uva mitzvoisecha tirdoif nafshi, and let my soul pursue your commandments. Tirdof, lirdof, to run after something, to pursue. Isn't it strange language to use? Uva mitzvotecha tirdof nafshi.
You also rodef shalom.
Rodef shalom, you have to pursue peace, right?
In the same way, like as we said, the same
What's
word
wrong with
for nafshi tidon. So again, we have nafshi that are blood, that are essence in terms of like our physical body.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying lirdof is like a sort of like an emotional response, right? You gotta run after something, pursue something.
You're asking for Hashem.
Huh?
How can you be at peace if you're
Depends. It depends what you're chasing.
Like for example, if
You're asking for
Shalom,
Hashem
you're chasing
to
after
chase
this peace.
for your
It's
soul
not
to
like
chase
an
him.
internal.
Here, so what? But why using that word chase? Why is the lashon? Why is the language over here being used as lirdof? Why is something? Perhaps use something a little
Because we have even
calmer, maybe? Huh?
That's elusive. You can't go to
The
the store.
deeper,
You can't
no.
go to the store and buy it.
Well, it's something that
Gotta, like,
it's something that you're continuously going after. I mean, even.
Oh,
like,
so
there's
why
no-
are you continuously going after it?
Because it's constant. Like, so for example, like I could have done a mitzvah yesterday, but the mitzvah is still incumbent on me today. I put on tefillin yesterday. It doesn't take away from my having to put it.
Okay, good. So maybe the language should have been that the mitzvah should be consistent. What's this
We know
lirdof?
that because we run after the mitzvahs also.
Oh,
Like,
so Rav Chaim Volozhin says like this: why are you running after the mitzvahs? Rav Chaim Volozhin was the foremost student of the Vilna Gaon. He says, why are you running after mitzvahs? Because we are a body and we are a neshama. And the physical dimension of who we are is not overly interested in doing mitzvahs. Right? The physical dimension of who we are wants to do physical things. Your physical body enjoys physicality. Your spiritual body can enjoy spirituality as much as you want, but why is my physical body getting involved over here? Right? So says Rav Chaim Volozhin, we have to force ourselves to want to do the mitzvahs. Uva mitzvotecha tirdof nafshi, that we're pursuing, we're forcing ourselves to be involved, that our spiritual dimension should be able to enjoy here in the physical world. Through the physicality, we're going to do the mitzvahs. Right? So maybe that explains something. The Maharal. The Maharal says that there's no mitzvah that we do that doesn't have a physical dimension to it. Maharal lived in Prague about 400 years ago. All mitzvahs have to have a physical dimension. Why is that? Because our bodies are physical, and they've got to be together with they've got to be a part of the process that the soul is experienced. That the body has to be a part of that as well, right? Which means that mitzvahs have to have a physical dimension so that my body can be a partner with my soul, and we can both enjoy together the experience of doing that mitzvah.
If you have to run after something, it implies that it's going away from you. So
I don't know. It implies that you want it. Maybe
you
it's
don't
not.
have to run after
No.
it if it's not moving back.
What if you're far away from it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe the it is not moving away. Maybe you're just far away from it, and you've got to run to get to it. The running. I think the thing over here is that the running is an indication of my excitement, right, and not an indication of the things moving away from me.
So we're asking for our spiritual to break through our physical?
We're
Is that what we're asking?
We're asking that our bodies should want to, right? Ptach libi b'toratecho uva mitzvotecha tidof nafshi, that the physical dimensions of who we are should want to be connected to what it is that we're doing. It should be as much in a desire to do the mitzvahs as your soul is.
And the Sefer Chinuch can add to that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, we're going to stop over here, Mitzvah Hashem. To be continued.